Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Desert. I'm Julia Alberg-Burbank, your worship associate for today. As we begin today's service, we acknowledge that we gather on the unceded lands of the Agua Caliente Band of the Cahuilla people, and we commit to grow in our understanding and relationship with this land and with the people who inhabited it and nurtured it before our arrival. In this congregation, we strive to honor the inherent worth and dignity of every person. You are welcome, no matter your sexual orientation or gender identity, your age or your size, whether you're rich or poor. We welcome people of all races, religions, and cultures. We welcome you wherever you come from, whoever you love. We welcome all those who will learn and grow with us as we commit together to embrace the rich and beautiful diversity of the world. Our goal here is to build a community centered in justice, in compassion, and in love. We're glad you are here with us today. Whether you are here in the sanctuary or at home, your presence is a blessing. We'd like to take a moment now to greet newcomers and visitors. If you're here for the first time and are comfortable, you're invited to stand or raise your hand, and an usher will come to you with a microphone. Right now, please just share your name and where you're from. And after the service, we can get to know you better at coffee hour. Let's see if we have any takers today. Right. It is July, after all. Now we will ring the Tibetan bowl and listen to our music for centering.
Good morning. As many of you know, I am the Reverend Ian Riddell, and I have the joy and the privilege to serve this congregation as its minister. It is good to be together today here in this place with all of you. We open today with the words of Pat Uribe Lichty. We come from many places along different paths, bringing different truths. We come with different histories and different realities, and yet we come together as one people, with faith that we can use our differences to heal ourselves and each other, to bring wholeness to a fractured world. We come seeking to find community, to find acceptance of who we are. In this place, we find others who are much like us and others who are much different. May our gathering today remind us that we are a people taught by different stories, with many voices, but always one people, working for a world where love creates justice and justice gives birth to peace. My friends, will you join today as we sing our opening hymn together, the meditation on breathing? We've done this recently and several times, but I'll lead you through a little bit how we're going to do it. There is a drone part, just a very repetitive part that sort of holds the whole thing together. Malcolm, could I have that C? And it just goes like this. It's the bottom two lines of words. Just breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe. Keep going. Breathe. And as we go along, you can stay on that part if you feel like being the basis of things, if you feel like resting in that simplicity. Or if we are singing the other part and you decide you just want to rest for a while, you can come back to that. So we'll do that a few times, and then I'll bring you in on the melody. Okay, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. Everyone on the drum. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out.
Please join me in the words on the screen as Reverend Ian lights our chalice. May love be the spirit of this church. May the quest for truth be its sacrament, and service be its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, and to help one another in fellowship. This is our aspiration. And now Margaret Manson is going to help us light our biopot candle. Please join with me in the words on the screen. We light these candles in solidarity with Black, Indigenous, and other people of color as we journey together towards spiritual wholeness. May we, as a beloved community, work to dismantle racism and all forms of oppression. May we live out our principles so that justice, dignity, and equity for all prevail. I have a reading for you today from We Call These Things Love by Reverend Adam Robersmith. One Sunday, I arrived at church 20 minutes later than I usually do because I could just not tear myself away from the miracle in my front yard any sooner. A family of 5 black bears, an adult female, 2 second-year cubs, and 2 new cubs were playing King of the Mountain on a massive mulch pile, waiting to be spread over the garden. The cubs would climb to the top, wrestle, tumble down, and climb right back up again. At one point, the mama bear grabbed one of her cubs, pulled it in close for a hug, and then let it go play with its siblings. There was no way I was going to leave my house until this was over. Not because there were bears in my yard and it was scary, but because there were bears in my yard and it was sacred. Love in relational and process theologies is not the warm and mushy feelings of pop music and romantic comedies. Love is what allows the world to exist. It is what holds all things together and makes existence coherent. Love is relationship at its best, a way of being that requires relational power, a power that values and respects that which it connects. What if we perceive love as love is also nurture and mutuality and sustainability and balance embedded in networks of relationship? We can observe how things live. We can find in them altruism, mutual benefit and thriving, the nurture of the young and the support of mates. We observe in other forms of life things that we humans do too. We call these things love when we do them. Though we do not know how other species understand these behaviors and feelings and motivations, because we observe them in others and ourselves, we can tell that we are not so very different from the rest of life. We are not unique in our drives to nurture, to seek mutuality, and to thrive. I do not know what the bears understood to be happening among them, but I recognized in their actions something akin to how I act, how I live. In the family of bears playing, I saw the nurture of young as relation actively realized, and I felt it, perceived it as love. Perhaps this is what the natural world can tell us about love. Not that other beings feel love as we do, but that we can recognize love as something more than our own feelings. If love is the very best version of relatedness, then love is at the center of life itself, and it is networked through our entire existence.
Thank you for that, Malcolm. Love is indeed a many-splendored thing. This is the time in our service when we share the joys and sorrows of our community. I will start with a great joy, a great gratitude for the support that you give to the work of this congregation, both in the treasures you have just shared, but also in the time and the talent, the sweat, and the concentration and the intention that you bring to everything you do with and in this community. Thank you. We cannot survive without all of us together. This is the time when we share those joys and sorrows as well that are in our hearts, that we carry with us through the day, through the week, through our lives. We have just one written down today, but I think it's a great one. I don't know who wrote this. It doesn't matter. But gratitude for being alive and being able to contribute. This is a gratitude I hope we can all share. And there are joys and sorrows, excitements and worries that we carry from our day into this place together. We carry them, we don't speak them out loud sometimes, but we carry them anyway. They sit on our minds, they sit in our hearts, they ache in our bodies, they concern or enliven our spirits. We come today in a world that is full of change, full of excitement, full of possibility, as well as full of fear and anger and violence. We carry all of this with us today. And so I invite you to be comfortable in your seat as we pause together in quiet. Never in silence, because the beating of our own hearts, the flow of our bloods, the hum of our synapses are always there, but also the sounds of our neighbors' breathing and the wind in the trees and the birds outside and the excited world around us is always there, even when we are not speaking. And so we pause together in quiet. Gratitude for the life that enlivens us, gratitude for the possibilities that bring us here. I invite you into a time of quiet and calm. I don't invite you to let down the worries of your day. They are with you. I don't invite you to lay down the excitement you hold in your heart. It is with you. But I invite you to hold them and yourselves lightly and in the love of this place, in the love of these people around us. as we hold in our hearts hopes for peace and safety for everyone in the world, as we hold in our hearts a hope, a demand, a desire for the end of violence and warfare, as we hold in our hearts a desire, a hope for the embrace of love and justice and kindness in all around us. And so we pause in the love of this community, in the love that generates in our own hearts, and in the love that is broader and deeper than we can ever know, the love that makes life possible. We pause in quiet, in the presence and embrace of that love. May all beings know peace. May all beings know an end to suffering. May all beings know love. Friends, will you join your voices together as we sing Spirit of Life, Fuente de Amor? Your voices bring me great solace, friends. I'm grateful for you. Thank you. I hope that you all have had a chance to read our board president's column in the August newsletter that went out on Friday. If you haven't yet, shame. No shame. No, we're talking about shame next month. No shame. I really recommend that you do take a chance to do it. Bob has beautifully shared a huge amount of information about a lot of the things that happened at the Unitarian Universalist Association's General Assembly last month, and where you might see some of that come into our lives in the next few months. In fact, keep your eyes on the order of service, specifically the back of the order of service. Not yet, though. We'll be making some changes in the next month or so that I hope will give us some things to talk about together. In the newsletter article, Bob writes quite a bit about the passage of the new language in Article 2 of the UUA's bylaws, language that grounds our collective work in the values of justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity. All of these growing out of our commitment to love, our practices of love, which we are claiming as the center of who we are as a faith tradition. The values we claim as a collective group of religious people come from many sources, many inspirations, and the new language also points this out. It says we draw upon and are inspired by sacred, secular, and scientific understandings that help us make meaning and live into our values. These sources ground us and sustain us in ordinary, difficult, and joyous times. Those are collective values that we share, and each of us claims and is claimed by values that have come to us learned throughout our own lives. I want to invite you to pause for a moment here. Be comfortable in a way that your body is comfortable and center yourselves a little bit, perhaps by breathing deeply, but center yourself a little. And think for a moment, what are your most central values? What are the values that call to you, the values that you center your life around as you move through the world? Now think to yourself, where did those values come from? Where did you learn them? How were they made part of you? Each of you knows individually what birthed and nurtured your values. Maybe you don't remember, but maybe we haven't really examined it all too closely. But so many things come together to bring us to the place where we are. I know that I carefully watch the adults around me. How did they respond to situations? What did they do when things were dicey or joyful? How did they respond to grief or need or anger or difference? The adults around me, the adults around us as we grow, provide us models of values. Whether we choose to accept them or decide to reject them, they are there. And of course, the religious and social and cultural communities of our younger years, of course, had a profound effect on us. I grew up in an Anglican cathedral. That's what Episcopalians are in Canada, is Anglicans, where the beauty of the space and the beauty of the ritual and the music were held as central. Unfortunately, sometimes the survival of the institution itself, the glory of the institution itself, was held up as a higher value than others, but that is perhaps one of the things that I have let go of since then, I hope. And though they are different than my current theological understandings, I grew up there with the stories of the Bible and the music based on those stories. One story, one passage from the Christian scriptures shared often in that community, and I know in other Christian communities, was the story of the day that Jesus was asked which of the 10 commandments, which of the commandments was the most important. Probably a trick question at the time, but a good question. Which was the most important? And he responded by saying, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment, and the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets." Now, I no longer claim a Christian belief system, but those words taught me something that is still central to me today, that love is at the heart of what we are called to do and be in the world, that everything we do, every choice we make, is to be understood through the lens of love. Perhaps you grew up in a Jewish community hearing the words of Leviticus saying, "You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the heirs of your own people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself." Or you grew up in a Muslim community and heard the words of the Quran reminding you that Allah planted love and kindness in our hearts and engenders love, and we are to relate to each other with love because of that. Or perhaps you grew your values in a pagan tradition or Hindu or Buddhist or around the dinner table in conversations about neighbors and politics and science. Or you read great works of literature or not so great works of literature that showed you values of understanding difference and how to deal with crisis. Or perhaps, like me, along with all of that, you watched a lot of Star Trek and read a lot of comic books. Comic books? Really? Well, you may have noticed since I've served as your minister that I often come back to comic books, and sometimes here at the end of July, I'll talk with you about comic books or movies or TV shows about superheroes. I come back to it. I do it this time of year right now because this past week is a significant and important one in the world of geeks and nerds and other cool people. It was the week of the San Diego Comic-Con. Not the only convention centering comics and superheroes in the entertainment industry, but certainly one of the most beloved and most important. People dressing up as their favorite characters, meeting and getting autographs from their favorite writers or artists or actors, watching panels and discussions about all things comics, and hearing announcements from the big publishers about what's to come in the year ahead. It's a big week and really important for a lot of people. It's the largest conference that San Diego hosts all year. So I think it's good to pay attention, especially since media based on comic books and superheroes is a huge part of the entertainment world these days. And I do this partly because I have loved superheroes since I was a young boy, buying comic books at the convenience store and watching the Super Friends on Saturday mornings. And I have loved them and bought comics featuring them for my entire life since then, still. To this day, Wednesday rolls around, and I log on to the app I now use to read them, times have changed, and see what's new with my favorites. And as much as the stories of Jesus from the community of my youth, and the adults around me, and Star Trek, and Ursula Le Guin have influenced me and who I am and how I understand the best ways to be in the world, comic books have often been this for me as well. Now, I've shared with you before my love of Wonder Woman and the Legion of Superheroes. Today, I want to talk a little bit about my other favorite hero, a favorite even before any of those others, the Flash. Now, the long and short of it is the Flash can run fast. That's it. Really fast, sometimes faster than light fast. He can vibrate through walls, he can stop bullets in flight, he can run across water, and sometimes run through time. Now, over the decades since he has appeared, several people have taken on the role, the identity of the Flash. Jay Garrick was first, and then Barry Allen, who sacrificed his life to save the multiverse, and then Wally West. Wally started out as the Flash's sidekick with a really creative name, Kid Flash. After Barry died saving the universe, Wally took on the role of the Flash. He was one of the first young heroes to take over his mentor's mantle, and one of the first heroes who was allowed to grow and change as a character as he aged. He started off brash and Midwestern and pretty conservative, but over the years, as he built friendships and relationships and family and experience, he grew to be caring and loyal and curious and accepting, still a little brash. And he fell in love. He had several girlfriends over the years, but eventually he met a reporter named Linda Park, and they fell in love. And after a while, they eventually married, and after a while, they had children. And their connection all through this time deepened and grew until they became one of the strongest and longest-lasting relationships in all of comic books. You can have your Superman and Lois Lane. You can have your Reed and Sue Richards. Wally and Linda for me. I said before that the Flash could run fast. Faster than light fast. So it's comic books. Who cares about physics, right? But several times now, Wally has run so fast that he's left our plane of existence behind, or shifted dimensions, or just gotten lost out there somewhere. And each and every time that has happened, the same thing has brought him home. Not science or magic or even his superpowers. The same thing, love. Specifically, the love that he and Linda have for each other. It has grounded them, connected them to something powerful, and it's been the center of the reality when Wally needed to find his way home. He found his way home to Linda. He was saved by centering love. Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman and Captain America and the Invisible Woman and Spider-Man have all fallen in love, yes. They all have people who they have loved most over the years, but only Wally West, in my book, has centered love in his life in a way that I find inspiring and grounding. Love is what has brought him back from past the edge of light and time again and again. And so, as we began being explicit here in Unitarian Universalist circles about choosing to claim that love was the center of our Unitarian Universalist tradition over the past years, I certainly recalled the story of Jesus answering the question about the commandments. Jesus announcing that everything else hung upon the love of the holy and the love of neighbor. I certainly remembered, as I've talked to you about before, that M. Scott Peck and Eric Fromm and Bell Hooks especially, and their idea of the centrality of love in their vision of ethics and relationship. But I also remembered Wally and Linda and the love that brought them together over and over again across the vastness of the universe. Now, perhaps your values were not nurtured by comic books, but maybe by some more scientific perspectives. I remember learning about cognitive behavioral therapy, championed by Albert Ellis and many, many after him. The specific practice that I remember growing out of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, was centered in self-talk, being able to challenge what was going on in your mind with rational conversation. This is, I know, a simplistic view, but it's an essential part of CBT. And growing out of that is the practice of interrupting the automatic processes of our minds. The process, for example, where something happens to us and we react immediately, instinctively. Sometimes those instincts are grounded in fear or loneliness or anger. Wherever they come from, they're unintentional and uncontrolled. I know you have all had the experience of someone saying something to you or something happening around you and you saying or doing something in response instantly without even thinking about it. And sometimes that's okay. Sometimes that hasn't worked out very well. And so CBT invites us to develop practices to interrupt those responses, to question the instincts, to choose better how to respond. Sometimes it's our own negative talk in our mind, to choose a more appropriate, less damaging, more constructive response. CBT suggests that developing this and other practices of self-talk will help us regulate and better integrate our emotions, our understandings, and our identities. We are to stop, even for a moment, and choose our response rather than simply react. I may have told you this story before, but there was a congregant in another congregation that I served who came up to me one day and said with a little wry grin on her face, "You know, Reverend Ian, I hear your voice in my head all the time." I was a little worried by this. And so I said, "What am I saying to you in your head?" And she said, "You're saying, breathe." So we take time to stop and breathe. What response should we choose then? We look at the world around us, at our political culture, our social media, and we see people reacting and responding and making decisions based on all sorts of principles and values and needs. We making decisions based in fear, making decisions based in maintaining power, in maintaining comfort, in maintaining convenience, making decisions based in anger, making decisions based on the way we've always done things or on the ways that maintain our wealth or influence. Our Unitarian Universalist tradition is telling us that that's not where we should base our decisions. Jesus and the Torah and the Quran are telling us that that's not where we should base our decisions. The flash is telling us that's not where we should base our decisions. There was a meme going around a couple of decades ago created by an early internet productivity guru and influencer before there were influencers, whose name I honestly can't remember. If in doubt, it said, choose love. The deepest of our values call us to choose love in our response to our neighbor, our enemy, our culture, our political and economic moment. Love. As part of the lead up to the vote on the new values language at General Assembly, the UUA published a book of essays called Love at the Center, Unitarian Universalist Theologies. In this volume, more than 24 Unitarian Universalists, ministers, musicians, lay people, religious educators, congregational leaders, historians, theologians wrote about where and how and why love was the center of their vision and understanding of Unitarian Universalism. I want to share a small sampling of those responses with you, but I do really recommend getting the book and diving in for yourself. It'll be part of my reading list this week. Now, you heard earlier the words of the Reverend Adam Robersmith from Julia. The Reverend Shige Sakurai writes, "For me, love is awakening to the realities of our interconnectedness, our interdependence, and behaving in ways that thoughtfully recognize these realities." For former UUA President Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, for her, to have love at the center invites the deeper question: how are we to live? Because love is a verb and a way of being in relationship. Reverend Sierra Maria Gerfau says, love is leaning into interconnectedness in ways that are generative or creative. And the Reverend Natalie Fenimore says, a theological exploration of love is a commitment to this relational way of being and to the action needed to maintain meaningful and healthy individuals and communities of care. Love is at the core of our Unitarian Universalist covenant, and acting in loving ways is how we show allegiance to that covenant. For all of these writers, love is relational. It calls us back to the understanding that we are part of an interdependent web, that we make choices in our lives that lead to deeper understanding, lead to spiritual growth, lead to strengthened relationships. The only way to respond to the pain and anguish and anxiety of the world around us is to ground all that we are and do in the practice of love in the world. It is the lens through which we must see the holy and each other. It is the choice that builds trust and justice and possibility, and it is the ground, the beacon, the connection that brings us home to ourselves and to each other every time we have moved beyond the edges of our understanding or lost ourselves in the chaos of the world or forgotten who we are and who we're in relationship with. May we always listen to hear the voice of love in our heads, in our hearts. May we hear it beckoning. And may we answer the call of love, calling us home to each other and calling us home to ourselves. May it be so. Friends, will you rise in body or spirit as we sing together our closing hymn, Answering the Call of Love?
Is blessed and made whole, the truth in our hearts is
There are two announcements this week. First, from the Social Justice Committee, a huge thank you to everyone who has donated backpacks, school supplies, and/or money last Sunday for Share the Plate. You have outdone yourselves, and the large box in the lobby is overflowing with your generosity. Today is the last day of the drive, so if you still have items in your car, don't forget to bring them in after the service. It is also your last day to sign up to volunteer with Galilee Center to fill the backpacks on August 7th and distribute them to kids on August 8th. More information and the sign up is on the round table in the lobby. And if you are watching from the comfort of your home, you can find all the info in last Friday's newsletter and sign up online. And then we have a brief correction to Women's Night Out. It is at 1501 Uptown Gastropub in Palm Springs on August 12th at 6 p.m. So if you could please RSVP to Susan Hannon, that would be wonderful. Thank you, ladies. Now, if you would join me as Reverend Ian extinguishes the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Before I give us our benediction, I want to say thank you to Julia and to Malcolm and to our AV folks and to our ushers and greeters and refreshments people who have made today possible and comfortable for us. Thank you all so much. And I want to give a special shout out to Jack Fitzsimmons for these fabulous images this week. I send him an email every week and say, this is what the service is about. And I sent him an email this week. He said, this one's a little tricky. He says, I got this. And so please, next time you see Jack, say thank you. They're fabulous. As Adam Robersmith said, love is what allows the world to exist. It is what holds all things together and makes existence coherent. With the call of that love in our hearts and in the work of our hands, friends, go in peace to love and serve the world.